Everyone, welcome back to the lifestyle-based podcast or lifestyle-based healing podcast. You've got your co-hosts here, me, Dylan,
And
and
I'm Robin.
um, Robin. Yes. Today we're talking about the biggest lie when it comes to type 2 diabetes. So for those of you out there dealing with blood sugar issues, maybe those started with prediabetes and now it's been diagnosed, or if you're still in that pre-diabetic range, or just worried about blood sugars in general because you have a family history, this is going to be really, really good for you because so many people end up on this path towards higher and higher blood sugars and thus higher and higher prescriptions and medications. And, it's just a really terrible chronic illness. And it doesn't have to be, these things can be reversed, they can be managed. And unless you know this, this, this truth that has been pretty well obscured and hidden, um, you can definitely end up on that path. Um, why don't you go ahead and tell us what that big lie is, Mom?
Yeah, the big lie is that you have to avoid all carbohydrates because they break down into sugar. Okay. And so, tell me, Dylan, how do you know so much about diabetes?
Well, my dad was diagnosed with it, uh,
Yeah.
and he went through that journey of reversing it and changing his lifestyle and turning it into an opportunity rather than just accepting the crisis and crossing his fingers hoping the meds would change anything because newsflash, they wouldn't. Um, so that's how.
Yeah. And a lot of those medications cause a lot of side effects. And so we want to really, be the first ones to tell you, if you don't already know, that it is possible to reverse diabetes, and people get all up in arms about that term. And I'm not saying if you're eating horribly and you're not watching it, that you're not gonna, if even if you get your numbers down, it won't come back. When I talk about reverse, we're just going the other direction toward, lower numbers. And so, and you can certainly do that through dietary
So why are
choice.
people so entrenched in avoiding carbs? Like, why is that happening?
Yeah, carbs are certainly villainized, and they are because it breaks down to glucose, which is sugar. And what is the main symptom of diabetes? It's high sugars. And so that's what they go measure. When you get your A1C, they're measuring your blood sugars. When you get your fasting glucose, it's measuring the sugars. And so people assume that sugar, glucose is sugar, and they're not wrong. It is. It's the fuel of choice of your body, and your carbohydrates are do break down to glucose. Even when you eat your protein, it goes through a process. It's not as easy, but it breaks down. It goes into your liver, which then breaks it down to sugar because that's the fuel of choice that your brain and body and muscles want to run on. And so, what they don't realize is that not all carbs are created equal. And so they
Hmm.
get very villainized. And so people start avoiding them altogether. Well, you have to eat something. So when you're not eating carbohydrates in a very carbohydrate rich world, then what are you typically eating? You're eating more, more meats, more high protein foods. And so,
Yes, we'll jump into that in a second.
yeah.
So a big misconception I think is because people are so afraid of carbs, they think that, eating sweets or sugar when they were a kid caused their diabetes. Is that true?
No, no. I think, there's a predisposition, certainly in families, and people assume it's genetic. They have to get diabetes if their parents had diabetes. I hear a lot of clients tell me that. It's like, oh, everyone in my family had diabetes. I'm just, it's in my genes. And I want you to challenge that no, there's a predisposition that it's like a toggle switch, right? That certain genes in our bodies can be toggled on and toggled off. It's not like eye color or hair color where it's set. This predisposition is one of those things that gets toggled on through lifestyle. So certainly, if you're eating, a lot of highly processed foods, a lot of high fat foods, a lot of sugary foods, and you're gaining extra weight and just eat, just not exercise, all the things we know contribute to lifestyle factors that can get toggled on. But you have more control than you think to keep it toggled off by how you are living your lifestyle and the foods you're choosing. for
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah, and so like when people are told, because most people go to even like a diabetes specialist or their doctor, they're told to kind of lose weight, um, avoid carbs or really count their carbs, right? Not
Yeah.
eat too many, essentially. What kind of path does that lead people down?
Yeah. And
What
so
does that
when
look like for people usually? And
yeah, it's
why is that?
very hard for people to stick to it. And so I can tell you, when I was going through school to become a dietitian, there's this whole process. You teach people how to count carbs, right? And how to keep a certain number in and how many they should have a day. And there's a chart. You follow how many foods are assigned so many points. It's really labor intensive. No wonder it's hard for people. And the sad thing about it is, yeah, it does keep your blood sugars down, but but it's hard to live that way. So no one sticks to it. And yet what it means that you're doing is you're choosing some of those foods that are actually driving the root cause of diabetes, which is insulin resistance. And so, what I found working with your father, my husband,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
really quick. Just
okay.
while we're here, um, like when people are counting carbs, let's say they were able to count carbs religiously and they still take the medication, like what does that lead them 5, 10 years, 20 years down the road? Does it actually
Oh,
work?
that's a really good question. And so, so typically that approach is supposed to slow down the progression of diabetes, and all along you're still on medications. So
Mm,
you're counting carbs to try to manage your numbers, but it's never a substitute really. I mean, maybe, but for medications, they work together. And so it's like over a 10-year period, you're going to see probably more and more medicine being added. And I think the trajectory I've seen is that you start on the lowest level of metformin or something, and over a 10 to 12-year period, it's pretty much inevitable that you'll be using insulin. Okay. And so it just slows the process down. And here's the thing, it lowers your numbers, but very rarely are they ever back to normal. And how it was explained to me is that blood sugars, this is why I'm not a big fan of the prediabetes category, because in my world, you're either normal or you're not. Okay. So even, there's in this middle ground of prediabetes, to me, that still means your blood sugars are elevated beyond normal. And what we know with blood sugars is they're almost like a corrosive material, right? Every place your blood flows gets hit by those higher blood sugars and likely affected. And so, that's why this prediabetes, people, if you're out there and you have prediabetes, don't ignore it. Start doing something about it, because it is kind of a red flag of going, hey, I need to do something. But for so many people, they don't take action. Okay, and
hmm.
I think that's why it's detrimental, and so and
You're
yet
saying
that,
even from that pre-diabetes stage, the process has begun where
yeah,
my body's losing the ability to manage its blood sugars. That's a
yeah,
problem because those high blood sugars wreak havoc on the rest of my body, all those little nerves and little capillaries, little blood vessels in your body, especially like your eyes, your hands, your fingers, your toes,
yeah,
uh,
your
and
kidneys, yeah.
kidneys, right? And you're saying, even if I manage my carbs religiously, I'm still going to be on that path towards needing more and more medication and dependent on that medication to manage the blood sugars. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say yes. And it's because you're managing the symptoms. You're not, working on the root cause of it. And back to the point of, where the blood's all flowing, the tiny capillaries. I've had two clients that had, urinary incontinence, very disrupting to their lives. Both had diabetes, and no one ever told them that it might be their high blood sugars that was contributing to that. And what we found is, and who knew if it was, but what we found is that neuropathy that also often goes with diabetes can also affect your inner organs. Okay, but we were more familiar with it being our fingers and our toes and glaucoma. We hear a lot more about that, or our kidneys. And it was interesting to me to watch them lower their blood sugars, lower their A1Cs, and have those symptoms go away. Okay. Was it actually the cause? I don't know, but it's pretty suspect, right? I mean, it's definitely pretty suspect. And why does it matter? They felt better. They didn't have this problem of having to wear diapers or having to find a bathroom all the time. So I just think that we don't really know what those high blood sugars at any level are doing to our whole body. So
Hmm. Okay, and say like I am counting carbs and trying to avoid carbs, like you said, like not all carbs are made the same, and also, is that advice ever misinterpreted? Because a lot of times people hear that and they go on the internet and Dr. Google tells them what to do, or their friend tells them what to do, and they come to you and you realize, hey, a lot of these foods you're avoiding are actually healthy for you. Tell me a little bit about that.
yeah, I think the biggest one is fruit. So many people with diabetes, type 2 diabetes, they like won't eat any fruit because what is fruit associated with? Sugar, right? And they think it's going to spike their blood sugars. And what they miss is that fruit is the whole package, right? It has a lot of fiber in it, which is, by the way, great for, stabilizing your blood sugars. It has water, it has nutrients, all those things. And so they cut out this whole food group. And yes, fruit is a carb, right? Vegetables are a carb, okay? And people don't ever think about that. So they just think of the sugar in it. And so, but what they cut out is these really great sources that actually will help them stabilize their blood sugars in a better sense. And yet they're not eating them at all. They're more focused on the grains. I think people think about carbs as grains, mainly the refined grains. And I agree with them. Those aren't really your friend. They're just not. But does it mean you can never eat any grains? No, eat the ones higher in fiber, right?
What's a refined grain? Like bread, pasta?
Bread is, yeah, has refined flour in it, right? So it's something like that. Pasta a little bit, but again, not all pastas. If you were choosing a whole grain pasta, it has more fiber in it. It's
Mhm.
actually denser than say bread. If you think about bread, it breaks down and it's high. You think about something called glycemic index. It
Mhm.
breaks, it's a higher glycemic index because it's airy. It's kind of, and it breaks down really fast in your stomach and raises your blood sugars. Whereas a whole grain pasta, it's dense. It breaks down very slowly, in your stomach and doesn't spike your bloodstreams as well. But yet people all the time tell me they avoid pasta
Mhm. What about
and
like potatoes?
and potatoes. Yeah, is the other thing. The denser potato you can find, the better. I'm a huge fan of, like the sweet potato yams type thing. But, potatoes aren't, if you're frying them as a French fry, absolutely. But if you're, eating a baked potato, and it's all about what are you putting on it.
Mhm.
Okay, that might be contributing to your insulin resistance versus spiking your blood sugars.
Yeah, so you keep mentioning this insulin resistance, and I'm wondering, like, okay, if one way I can slow the progression of the disease, what does the root cause in insulin resistance have to do with like reversing it?
Yeah, and so do you actually want to know the process, or is that what you're talking
Um,
about?
yeah, yeah. Tell me about like insulin resistance.
Okay, so insulin resistance, it's becoming more mainstream to talk about this, and people are understanding diabetes more, and that's the root cause of what's driving your high blood sugars, the symptom that the medications are treating, right? And so, insulin resistance, how it was described to me is, you eat when you eat carbohydrates, your blood sugars rise. That's a normal process. And the process, then your pancreas actually releases insulin. And insulin's job is to take the blood sugar, the glucose out of your bloodstream and carry it into your cells. Okay. And what the problem is, why your resistance is those receptors that are on those cells are actually clogged up. And so that resistance now is a resistance, right? It won't allow you to do it. And so the insulin's not able to do its job of carrying the glucose into the cell. Make sense? Yeah.
Hmm.
And so what we need to do and what's in that cell that's causing that clog is fats. Okay. And so the fat builds up in it. And I'm not talking necessarily about your fat cells, like in the adipose tissue. certainly that's not healthy either, but it's like, in other cells, and so what happens is like we want to start clearing that out. All right. And so the way we do that is lowering those foods that are causing it.
Hmm. And generally speaking, like what are those foods? So like
They're,
instead of
they're,
avoiding carbs, you know,
saturated fats,
mm,
and so we want to definitely lower the saturated fats. And where do those come from? You think about the products like coconut oil, oddly has saturated fat. You think about butter, some of the uh, uh, dairy products, right? Some of the dairy products are the butter, the sour cream, the yogurt, the cheese that everybody loves so much, the meat products. They definitely have saturated fat in them. And the thing about saturated fat, not only is it not great for your insulin resistance, is it's not good for your heart health either. All those same foods carry cholesterol with them. And one of the biggest concerns of people with type 2 diabetes is heart disease. Okay. Often it's not the diabetes that's going to kill you, it's the heart disease that's going to kill you. Okay. And so it's really beneficial to consider your heart health and your kidney health as well as you're making those choices.
cool. And can you kind of tie it in a bow with like a story of someone that, moved from carb counting to, this other approach and was able to get off meds or just got off meds in general?
Yeah, I can't just pick one. There's so many. I've seen so much success when people, really start looking at what they're eating. And, sadly, often what they're told when you're diagnosed with diabetes, especially if you're carrying a little extra weight, you're told to lose weight, exercise, eat healthy, and often they'll add on and take the medications. Okay. And, I think so. What people will typically do is they try to lose weight because that's what they're told to do. So they start eating less and less and less. And then they start making these choices because they're still hungry and they're avoiding carbs. So they start eating more and more meat and dairy and those things, and their cholesterol goes up. So when we start swapping those things out and we start saying, no, you can eat fruit and you can eat vegetables and you can eat grains, you can have some whole wheat pasta, you can have beans. So, focusing on kind of, legumes and lentils and, fruits and vegetables and grains and nuts and seeds, it makes your diet very diverse, yet you're going to be reducing those foods that have, the saturated fat. So when I did this with this particular client, for the first time ever, she saw her numbers coming down. She didn't think it was possible. And, she also started losing weight. And she was, how can I be eating this much, this much food and be full and so satiated and be losing weight and seeing my numbers come down? It was just shocking for her. Okay. And so I want you to realize that it is possible. All right. And it doesn't happen overnight. It took her a year to get off her insulin. Okay, but we started, going through those medications. The first thing they lowered was cholesterol medication. Then the next thing she was off the medication. Then her high blood pressure medicine, because often when you have diabetes, you're on those three medications. Her high blood pressure medicine got lowered. Then she was off of that, and then in between that, she lowered some of her blood sugar medication. So it just starts like kind of spiraling down in a good way, where you're getting off these medications and become slimmer. You have more energy. Some of the symptoms that go along with diabetes is you're constantly tired, brain fog, you're just not feeling good. And so all those things started remedying as well. I mean, you probably know some stories too, right? Of people you work
Yeah,
with.
and I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I guess we're not going to name her, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's amazing what's possible. The body really can heal a lot, and we just have to break that dependence on the medication, and you can do that. The only thing that can do that is through lifestyle. You know.
And that's why we do this lifestyle-based healing because when you alter your lifestyle, you heal. Your body wants to be healed. It works really hard to stay in balance, and so we just have to give it some tools to do that, and that's what we're encouraging you to do.
Yep. So where can people get in touch with us?
Yeah, you can find us at the Revitalized Center .com.
To like, subscribe on whatever channel you're seeing this on,
Yeah.
and we'll see you in the next one.
Okay. Bye, everyone.